5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'm John Miglosh for the Wisconsin DMA and the International Society for Strategic Marketing. Well, let's dig in. Okay, first off, I thought this was interesting. Pier-1, a buzzworthy buyer, is snapping up the IP, intellectual property, of one of America's many troubled retail chains. And apparently it also happened that last year, Dress Barn, who I've done some consulting for in expert witness, had to do depositions. It was really interesting, actually. I did some other work related to Toys R Us, expert witness depositions. Oh, that's scary stuff, man. You sit in a little room with an attorney and a transcriber. And but it's interesting. Anyway, so if you ever need that, well, be careful who you ask, because I'll give them the straight scoop. But anyway, Pier-1 was bought up by Here in My Garage guy, Ty Lopez, which I'm guessing is a person of color. I saw his picture, but, you know, I don't know. What do I know? I just read that the guy from I always call it Skype, but it's something like that. It's a detective show. That guy basically camouflaged his Hispanic heritage for like 20 years and just came out about it because his relationship with his dad dramatically improved and he decided to do it. So that's good, I think. So anyway, there's 2 points to be made here. One, they're going to do something with it. I'm not sure. Maybe that Rev Group also bought Dress Barn. Dress Barn they were going to turn into an online tool. Alex Mayer is a former NASA scientist who sold the online dating platform Zoosk in a deal valued at $250 million. Okay, their MO is to take failing retail chains and spin them into e-commerce success stories. Dress Barn, yeah, there it is, Dress Barn. Another closed all 544 stores last year, and a subsidiary of the same company bought Dress Barn's RP and kept the brand alive. Apparently, Victoria's Secret is also making that kind of move. So anyway, we will hear more about that. Back to school spending could hit record levels, and I'm not sure if that's very hard right now. But, you know, there's some good news in the market. There's some good news in the marketplace. And parents are stocking up on expensive technology like laptops, tablets, and headphones so that the kids, when they go back to school, don't have to interact with anyone at school. They can go back to being in their own little solipsistic universe. Okay, we'll just go on. This was an interesting story from Media Post. There are few non-white editors outside top U.S. news outlets. They surveyed 20 major online and legacy news outlets in the United States. and also the report, Race and Leadership and News Media, 100 outlets in 5 different markets. 10 online, 10 offline. Okay? And what they found was, of the 5 markets in the report are Brazil, Germany, South Africa, United Kingdom, and the United States. 18% of the top 88 editors across the 100 brands are people of color. Only 18%, but 41% of the populations across those countries are non-white. Now, this is not about whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, because I understand that, you know, it depends, right? But I decided that this would be an interesting illustration of how to think about data. So I went over to the NCES Fast Facts tool, which gives you the degrees conferred by race and sex. Because I thought, I would think a news editor, it'd be good to have a college degree. Just a thought. And it turns out, if you scroll down, that white degrees, and whites, you know, are, let's say, 80% or so. They said 18% non-white, so, or 18%. Yeah, it's, you know, blacks are about 12%, and Hispanics, I think, are about the same. I can look it up. I'm not about looking it up. I'm just telling you, here's a way to fact check stuff if you wanted to dig into it. And but what we see is that only 33% of black men graduate from a college, get a college degree, even at post-secondary institutions, so it could be an associate degree and it could be a tech degree, I guess. 36% of women, but the differential is actually bigger among white and black women. Asians, knocking it out of the park, but and in some studies, Asian is considered white. Anyway, so what we have is an underrepresentation in college degrees. Now, if you want to do this study right, instead of taking overall population, and I should point out that Hispanic degrees, for example, in the last few years have doubled, literally doubled in number, and I guess also in percentage of the Hispanic population. So there's progress being made. There's tremendous progress being made. I would say in the last 20 years, black degrees have probably also doubled. And that's kind of what happens, when my grandparents came across on the boat. My great-grandfather, I think, hadn't graduated from, a high school. It didn't have a high school degree. My grandfather taught high school. My father got a college degree. I got a graduate degree. So, that kind of happens as people integrate into society when they immigrate. Anyway, just wanted you to think about how to think about data. We see this kind of thing happen all the time in the news. Moving on, Summer Gould. I really like Summer. Summer's great. Thanks for the like yesterday on I did an article called Direct Mail Ain't Dead, or did a video. If you didn't see it, I think you'll enjoy it. I take a very different look at why mail should be used by every.com with even a couple of thousand customers, just as a research tool. So Summer points out, number one, font. Now, I would not put font number one, but don't pick what you consider a fun and whimsical font that makes your copy hard to read. Your font size matters too. Make it larger. Now, I did creative consulting for the Billy Graham Association back in the day, and we analyzed the number of leads, the cost per lead. They would put, this was their annuity division, and the annuity division took out ads in the general Billy Graham Association magazine. It might have been called Awake or something like that. Anyway, so we analyzed it, and one of the big findings that I came across was if the font was lower than 8 point, I think it was 8 point or lower, which sometimes it was in the body copy, the response dropped to 0, just 0. Now, they were targeting primarily elderly women, saying here, when you make out your will, and their number one headline was, will the state make your will or write your will? And that was a big one. That got a lot of leads. Fear motivates. But the font size was incredibly important. And so think about that. Hand it to your grandpa and see if he can read it. Old list. Now, most of the time, people will put the list at the top of the list because if you send the list to the wrong people, you're out of luck, right? You're just out of luck. And I remember doing a lead generation campaign. I didn't do it. One of my clients did it, and then they sent it to me and said, what do you think is wrong with this? Well, first off, they had a customer list of machines. They sold binding machines. And the head of the company said, we need to do our reports nicer. We need one of these fancy thermobind machines or ring binder machines or whatever. But the person who bought the supplies was usually the office manager. So they mailed a supplies catalog to the owner of the company who couldn't care less and got very, very little business. Well, later, so then we did an outbound campaign and found that the list, we fixed the list. And we'll go on about that. So 2 years older or better, you better clean it. It says don't use it, but there's really good ways to update your list. Find the dead people, find the people that have moved. All of that can be done in an automated fashion, very low expense. Give me a call if you need more info. Lies. Never lie to people. Now, this is an interesting one because it's hard to illustrate. But I did a campaign with a really creative art director who I later hired and just busted open the business. He was great. But the owner of the business had done a flyer for tie downs on trucks, the straps that hold stuff down, and it looked like a ransom note where the words were cut out, in different fonts and pasted on a piece of paper, and they used a photocopy machine. And he got a pretty good response rate, and he thought, well, if I get this professionally done, I'll do great. And we snazzied it up. The fonts were too small, but it looked like it had been done at an ad agency. And we actually glued pieces of the strap to the mailing piece. So it made it very expensive. We got no response whatsoever. And you say, well, how's that lying to people? Well, it's lying to people because this is a down-home little company with an owner that wanted to do some mail. And it worked great. He should have just mailed more. Or tested it, split tested it. But instead, he went all in on this agency because he knew the owner of the agency, and it just did nothing. Now, that happened also with that machine company. They put together a flyer for teachers, and they mailed 150,000 pieces to school teachers who use laminators to, preserve the maple leaves and stuff that your kids bring to school, or the crayon drawings that your kids bring to school. You've probably seen them come home in plastic. And they use a specific little kind of laminator. Well, the mailing piece had pictures of the kind of printing company would use to laminate a fancy brochure or a restaurant menu. So that didn't apply to the market. And they also put a fancy coating on the mailing piece and then said sale. Well, it wasn't a sale, and it looked very, very expensive. And they got no response at all. No leads, no nothing. Like 3 leads out of 150,000. They wrote to me and asked me what was wrong. And I said, well, you don't want to put, I learned from the other experience, you don't want to put a fancy schmancy, and it had a picture of the pyramids and how they, things were preserved in the pyramids, and that they could preserve your kids' work and all this. And it just screamed high-end and expensive mailing piece. And then they had a sale. They put sale on it, just slapped it on there. When I wrote my review, which was a full page, the creative guy who had built it accused me of a vendetta against him. I didn't even know who he was, but they revised it with my ideas, and it did fine. Unclear or lack of call to action. I did work with Adobe. I'm not Adobe. Oakley, the sunglass. I did work for Adobe too, but the sunglass company, and they wanted to do a tennis shoe because they were going to do a joint venture with Nike where they sold Nike tennis shoes and Nike sold Oakley sunglasses. And then Nike pulled out of the deal, so they decided to do a Kevlar, which is the bulletproof material, a Kevlar tennis shoe so you couldn't shoot yourself in the foot. And I'm not kidding. I'm really not. And they handed me the mailing piece, or the mock-up of the mailing piece, and said, what do you think of it? And I said, there's no way to order. And they said, oh yeah, sure, look here, look at right here in this paragraph, there's an 800 number. I said, no, there isn't. They said, yes, it's right there. See it? I said, no, I don't see it. It's buried in a paragraph. Nobody's going to see it. Make it bigger. This is before the internet caught on. It was out there, but that's not the way you would market. And so they did. It's not something you need to test, because it's just there. If there's no obvious response device, it's not obvious you're trying to get people to respond. So, your URL, your QR code, don't hide your QR code in a picture. I know, you can make them download the app for that special QR code. Don't do it. Put a regular, ugly QR code somewhere, and people will get, oh yeah, my phone works with that already. Right? Make it obvious. Make it big enough to see. Don't make it a 1/4 inch square to hide it. Don't let your designer hide it. Put the price nice and big. Let them know what the value is, what the special is. Okay? So anyway, great job, Heather. Great job, Summer. Features. Don't focus your direct mail on features. No one cares. Sell the benefits. Now, that isn't always true. You know, sometimes if your screen is twice as big, people will care. But the benefit is that you won't have to squint to read your phone. Now, you will have to have a wheelbarrow to carry it around with you, or rolling luggage. Anyway, so if you have trouble figuring out the benefits, and I just did it for you, list features on a piece of paper, and next to each one, list at least one benefit. So if you're selling vacuum cleaners, a benefit of the stronger motor is the amount of junk and dust it'll pick up in a shorter amount of time. The old Kirby's, man, they were great. They would suck the carpet right up. Anyway, here's the best final thought. Split your list in half and send a new piece of mail to the new piece to one half and your last great piece to the other half. This isn't just try new things. This is split testing, and this is one of the things that direct mail can do that mass media and digital can't do nearly as well. Not nearly as well. We can track it all the way to the sale. It's not hard. And if you don't know how, find out. But this is like the key to a solid epistemological, I call it epistemological foundation. This is something that you can do, and in yesterday's talk I gave a brief overview of a split test where we used mail to find the proper offer, to drive traffic, but then to retool our TV ads, retool our website and our digital ads, and we drove massively more traffic. Then we retargeted with mail, knowing what got people to the stores. But all the research was done with mail and then leveraged into other media. And that's the way to do it. Well, that's enough for now. I've gone way too long. Have a great day. Like and share. Your friends will think you're smart. Bye-bye.